I guess part of the problem is the issue of what do we mean by space-time? Is space-time a thing? Is it just there? Is space-time for the inorganic, which we are at a level of analysis, is that different than the space-time that comes with different kinds of nervous systems? Do nervous systems themselves introduce kinds of time in relationship to space? And is part of the problem of mind-independent reality, or the belief in it, which I think is, when we start to talk about the inorganic and how the inorganic preceded the organic, I think we want to believe in our ability to represent a past before there were pasts as pasts could be known. Right? It's like we're part of a kind of space-time of the living, of the organic, that seems so different than the space-time of the inorganic. The space-time of the inorganic seems to be this forever growing present of here now. It's here now in all directions. There's no, well, I guess there's not even a here now. There's nothing. See, there's no locality to delimit. It's in some way, it doesn't make any sense. There's no perspective, there's no depth, there's no size or perspective or scope, there's no range and no distances, even though there are obviously endless kinds of relations between and among the things that we who know about such things say about them. There, I don't think that we're suggesting, or I don't think that that when people think about the inorganic or the world as it was before life emerged, the universe, the cosmos as it was before life emerged, I don't think that we're gonna say it's nothing but imagination. I think we're gonna say it's something like an inference of reasoning based upon statistical and scientific forms of observation, largely through telescope and microscope. Communication technologies are so crucial. And then when you start to ask about, what is memory, what is imagination, what are nervous systems, and how do nervous systems relate to communication technologies of various sorts? How do they relate to what space-time is? Now, is there such a thing as space-time? Are there many space-times? Is space-time a plural and more plastic and more subject to variation? It's there's different levels to get at it. I mean, there's one sort of hard scientist level where you could say, two twins, just for argument's sake, you kind of imagine them where the one twin does nothing but walk everywhere he goes. And so, they walk him home from the hospital, and then he grows up and he sort of walks around and he works right up the road and he walks to work every day, and that's the person's life. The other twin, from the very beginning, they drive him from the hospital and he rides bike everywhere, and the next thing you know, he becomes an expert at driving cars really fast, and then he becomes a pilot who spends the bulk of his life flying around in the planes. He's literally almost in the air continuously. Now, if they both live to be 80, we could ask a really scientific, technical question of, is the one twin technically younger than the other? Now, if people want to say that the one person is actually younger than another, we do get into these interesting questions about how our space-time and life and agency and relative movement, and what is relative movement? Is thought a kind of movement that's relative? I think part of the concern that I have, and this is, I guess, related to the what we mean by space-time is that there seem to be things like memory and imagination and reflection and self-awareness where I can combine my ability to remember what happened and to imagine what might happen and to engage in a kind of self-discourse where I'm critically assessing how I've been taught, what I think about things, and it's related not only to how I feel in the moment, but I guess the kinds of person that I want to be. See, I think motives are more than because of. Oftentimes, motives are in order to. And even if we say imagination is some product of the past, it's some product of what had evolutionary survival value, I don't think that imagination is simply following out. No, imagination was the capacity to, I guess, in one's mind's eye, with the advanced frontal cortex and with the kinds of sophisticated language we have, to imagine a kind of domain that deals with possibilities and probabilities sort of symbolically represented. And when you introduce these kinds of memory that evolution made possible, kinds of memory that are new ways of time relating to itself. It's not as if the past is real and then memory is a fake, cheap knockoff representation of it. In some way, what we call the past is only possible because of memory. Now, is there something there more than memory? I think so, but it doesn't have pastness as part of it. See, again, in some way, the past as past, that is, assumes a relation to me in the present, which at the level of the inorganic kind of doesn't make any sense. But that doesn't mean that, again, as scientists want to talk about the universe before life evolved, I don't think they're making it up. What we're saying is that intelligence and memory and imagination make possible new kinds of space-time, and those kinds of space-time, although they're never ever released from or outside of or independent of causal forces, they seem to be occurring at different levels of abstraction, that we are as as things just in the kind of here and now of the inorganic. That's never escapable, and we don't want to deny that, but the me who I can think about, who is in this expanded range of an elongated moment, right? It's a place and moment, not just a point, a dot, and that I guess expanded place and moment, it's partly liberated by those kinds of intelligence which are growable, those kinds of intelligence which a person can, through first learning language, that is, when a person learns language, they get opened to a whole new sense of space and time. That in some sense we can say, well, they're just representing that space and time. No, they're constituting it. They're making that space and time possible. That is, the future doesn't really exist, but we can imaginatively, collectively navigate toward it in such a way that we're creating it. And I think I want to say something really quickly here about stochastic process. I think some people want to suggest that stochastic process is exclusively defined in physics, but that's just really not true. That stochastic, I mean, the word goes back to Greek, and it really is used in many, many different fields. It's used in linguistics, it's used in evolutionary biology, it's used in history, it's used in psychology. Many different areas of scientific study where there are contingencies that unfolded that they didn't seem to happen by a necessity or by a law. They seem to happen, in the way that a predator can chase a prey. There's a domain of agency. None of that leaves causal forces, but that domain. Try to think of the difference between the drive of hunger as it comes from the fact of having a body. Now, even that, when you eat, where you eat. Okay, there's a difference between dietary practice and hunger. There seems to be that hunger is a fact. Do people need to eat? Well, some people have been able to go on starvation diets, and there is some weird way in which some people do seem to be able to consciously try to diet. They could get meta-level strategies, whatever. But if you just look at dietary practice, it seems very different than hunger. That is, the need to eat seems very different than what you end up eating. In some cultures, what people eat as food, other people from different cultures, they wouldn't even recognize that as food. You can actually question whether or not meat is food. You can say, should I, even though my culture tells me meat is food, do I really want that? And you can hear all kinds of reasons. You can hear about animal cruelty. You can hear about your health. You can hear about the, farming implications and some of the ecological implications of, hamburgers for everyone. Now, there it seems like there are going to be something like ideas. Now, are ideas at the same level of abstraction as the inorganic? Let's take something like a number. So I'm able to do some calculations, and I can, through some statistical reasoning, demonstrate the health benefits of becoming a vegetarian, and I can demonstrate with a whole list of numbers. I can show that it's going to be better for the environment, it's better for animals, and it's better for your health. It's all around better. Now, first, are the numbers at the same level of causal material reality as the inorganic? Can numbers cause anything? Now, some people will hear the statistics and they will react to them in one way, others will react in another way. And we will say that the events that lead prior to that will have some impact. Now, what are those events? Again, I think that there are multiple questions that are going on, so maybe that's partly confusing. But I do think the question of, aren't symbolic representations like numbers, like abstract ideas about imaginary things, aren't those part of what we use within this domain of space-time that's been opened up by our very complex, sophisticated kinds of nervous system? And isn't that a unique evolutionary accomplishment, not something that is, scuffed off as an illusion that, I'll just end with this. I heard someone suggest something like that, in the same way that Galileo was seen as, heretical, and, Copernicus, again, seen as heretical, but, now people realize the truth, and then someday people will realize the truth about determinism. And as much as I thought, there are some people who really do need to understand the non-magic, the non-divine intervention, the non-acausal forces. But on the other hand of that, I think there's somebody who's really missing the difference between some fact about the inorganic world that is as it is independent of us, and those kinds of facts about us that disclose a fact about nature. That is, the degree to which nature, through various blind forces, evolved organisms that could use memory and imagination and intersubjectively navigate to a co-created future. Okay, thank you.